Reality 7. Welcome to Earth. Two suns, twin titans that never sleep, set the skies on fire here. Their never-ending fire has turned the globe into a hot and bright place, with deserts that spread across continents and oceans that shrink into shallow waters with cracked salt plains around them. There is no longer true night. Darkness only falls for a brief instant when the suns are properly aligned. In those rare minutes, shadows come back, and people see the stars' beauty that they had forgotten. This planet is full of extremes, and life survives in unexpected and amazing ways. Plants have shiny leaves that reflect light like mirrors, which helps keep their delicate veins safe. Roots go deep into stone and find the hidden rivers that still run beneath the ground. Some plants shine dimly at dusk, like delicate memories of stars that have been lost in the continual flame. This reality has also changed animals. Insects scurry around with shells that shine like polished metal. Birds ride the thermals that never stop and hardly ever come down. Predators look at you with silvered eyes, which are reflections of the sun. People had to change too. Centuries of constant light changed their bodies in new ways. Skin became thick, firm, and resistant to burns. Their eyes grew huge and bright, with irises that seemed like molten silver and pupils that opened wide to take in every detail while blocking out the overwhelming light. We might think these people were strange, yet their faces tell a story of how they adapted and how a species refused to die. But the surface of the Earth is still a cruel place, even though it is so strong. Most of the people on Earth have taken shelter below, where they have built civilizations in the dark. Underneath the blazing deserts, huge caves hold whole countries. In underground cities, towers made of glass and steel rise. They are not lit by the sun above, but by illuminating crystals and fields of bioluminescent fungi. Solar collectors on the surface send energy to these secret places, and underground rivers bring water to millions of people. Lumeris is the biggest city of these. It is a huge capital under the ruins of the old Mediterranean and is ruled by the Council of Light. Philosophers, technologists, and politicians promise their people survival, but ambition is always a part of power. Rival states are getting stronger outside of Lumeris. The Solar Dominion, which is underneath the Himalayas, builds armies in the dark to get ready for war. Across the Americas, broken city-states fight over aquifers, giving up lives for drops of water. People got away from the surface, but they didn't get away from themselves. In the middle of this fight, a faith has grown. Many people revere the suns as immortal gods, yet some people say that salvation is not found in light, but in darkness. The shadow cult is what they call themselves. The alignment of the suns, which is when one star blocks out the other for a short time, is not a festival to them. It is a prophecy. They believe in the eternal shadow, a time when the alignment would endure not minutes, but days, maybe even years. This is crazy to most people. For them, it is the promise of a new life. They watch the waters coming back, the lands getting cooler, and the balance coming back. And every 100 years, when the suns briefly overlap, the globe stops to watch. In Lumeris, millions of people gather in silence, turning off their fake lights so they may see dim stars shining through stone shafts. Nomads walk into vast grasslands and raise their arms to receive the uncommon gift of shadow. But for the sect, who are concealed in forgotten tunnels, the moment is met with both awe and fear. To them, it is not a celebration, but a warning. Young historian named Alien starts his voyage in this planet, where the sun never sets and the darkness never lasts. He finds a piece of stone in the Lumeris archives that has phrases on it that have been forbidden for a long time. They talk about something that happened a long time ago, before the cities, before the council, and maybe even before memory itself. Most people would say that the inscription engraved into the stone is a myth, but it is so clear that it scares him. The eternal shadow is not a dream or a hope, it's coming. There is a second world under the unending deserts of Reality 7 that is concealed from the sun's searing anger. This is a realm of stone, gloom, and frail light, where people have made their last home. There are huge caves that go on for kilometers, and the ceilings are so high that they disappear into the dark. The only sounds are the echoes of machines and the hum of fake rivers. Cities here look like upside-down skylines, with steel and glass towers rooted to the cavern floor and lit up by crystals and fungal lanterns that look like a sky that has been gone for a long time. The air is cooler and smells like wet stone, yet it's still hard to stay alive. Elian, a young historian from Lumeris, resides in this realm. He wanders through the archive's hallways, which spiral down into the bedrock and are loaded with records of human struggles. The archives are like temples of memory, with carved tablets, holographic scrolls, and bits of wisdom that have been picked up from the ruins on the surface. Most people in Lumeris never go to these halls. They see history as a burden, something they would rather forget. But for Elian, the past is the only thing that can help him understand the present. Lumeris is both amazing and a prison. 10 million people live there, and their lives are limited to the maze of caves that lie beneath what used to be the Mediterranean Sea. There is nothing but dunes and ruins above their heads. Below their feet is the abyss of undiscovered stone. Life here depends on accuracy. Water is measured out in drips, food is grown in vertical gardens that get their light from artificial sources, and air is cleaned by huge engines that throb like the city's heart. The Council of Light controls the cycles of light diminishing in each family's room to make it feel like a rhythm that has been lost. The council rules with the assurance that it must. They say they don't act like monarchs, but as protectors of survival. Every breath, every bite of food, and every sip of water comes from their orders. But underneath their calm words is a city full of people who are unhappy. Merchants talk about shortages, miners talk about tunnels that have fallen down, and troops from the Solar Dominion sharpen their swords in the dark beyond. In a world where survival is hard, rumors can spread faster than water. There is a hidden fascination with the alignment of the suns among all of these issues. The fleeting shadow crosses the world every 100 years, and Lumeris celebrates by being quiet. But there are others who think the council is hiding the truth. They say that old records say that eclipses lasted longer than minutes and changed the course of history. Most people think this is heresy, the crazy ideas of cultists and dreamers. But Elian starts to question when he spends time alone in the archives. Elian found something hidden deep in the forbidden stacks one night when the city turned down its artificial lights to mark the end of a cycle. It was a piece of stone with lines carved into it that were older than any city. The writing was so precise that it looked almost like it was from another world. The writings didn't talk about worship or prophecy. They talked about observation, records, of the sun moving in ways that hadn't been observed in thousands of years. They talked about a shadow that lasted for years, not just a few minutes. A darkness that cooled the world, woke up the oceans, and drowned civilizations that had come before. He was shaken by what he found. If this were true, it would mean that the council was wrong when they said the world would last forever. The suns could fail, line up, and deliver chaos instead of salvation. Elian recognized that this kind of information couldn't be disseminated easily. The council kept anything that could cause trouble from getting out, and the cult of the shadow would use it as proof of their beliefs. But hiding it felt like treachery, since if the eternal shadow was real, then Lumeris wasn't ready. The suns blazed above the city, unseen, but always felt, their heat pushing through stone. Elian put his palm on the old piece of rock in the middle of the archives and felt the weight of many generations echoing through it. History was still alive. It was alive, with a pulse under the sand, waiting to be found. He stepped back into the dark hallways of Lumeris, holding the knowledge of the eternal shadow. He knew that his reality was already altering. The days in Lumeris went by in a meticulous rhythm, with fake lights getting brighter and dimmer to mimic a cycle that had been lost. But Elian felt like time was broken. The piece he had found stayed on his mind, and the words engraved into it echoed in his head with every step he took through the busy streets of the cave city. He tried to hide himself in his daily life, going to lectures at the archives, arguing with other historians, and reading quietly at night under the light of crystal lamps. But the weight of all the knowledge he had was like the suns themselves. The stone didn't talk about myths or stories. It talked about cycles, eclipses that lasted for years and devoured whole centuries, and civilizations that rose and fell under shadows that lasted for years. Lumeris would not last if such a shadow arrived again. At first, he thought of telling the council. The archivists routinely sent reports to the ruling chambers, and he had the right to present the results. But he knew how the council dealt with problems very well. History was a way to control people, not a way to find the truth. Quietly, records that could cause trouble were destroyed, and pieces were locked away where no one could see them. If he said anything, his finding would disappear into silence along with him. Elian strolled the streets with a secret that weighed on him, And it was during those restless walks that murmurs started to reach him. People who worked at market booths pushed in too close and asked him if he had ever seen the stars. Women in the silence of libraries left bits of paper in his way with sentences scribbled in code that talked of shadows, prophecy, and waking up. He thought they were just a coincidence at first, but the pattern became too evident to ignore. The cult of the shadow, who dubbed themselves the Keepers of the Truth, were watching him and even trying to win him over. He was followed one night while crossing a tunnel that connected the archives to the lower regions. Footsteps reverberated behind him, slow but purposeful. Two people came out of the dim light of the fungus lanterns when he turned. They were dressed simply, yet their eyes shone with a brightness that made him uneasy. One woman with a scar on. Her cheek walked forward and said his name like it was an old memory. "You carry a lot of weight, historian," she observed. "The words you found are not new. They are older than the cities and the council. We've been waiting for someone to find them again." Alien stopped moving. He had never told anyone about the piece, but there they were, strangers who knew his secret. They led him deeper down the tunnels, past old shafts where miners had looked for water, until they got to a cave that was lit by hundreds of little fires. There, scores of people stood quietly, looking up at a ceiling engraved with old symbols. It was a secret spot where the cult convened in defiance of the council's rules. The woman said her name was Kaylin, and that she worked for the Shadow. She told Elian that the piece he found was one of many that were left behind by civilizations that had seen the eternal shadow before. They also kept records by carving them onto stone, weaving them into chants, and remembering them. The council dubbed them heretics, but Kaylin and her followers saw them as protectors of the truth. Elian wanted to refute them and say he had nothing to do with their faith. But as Kaylin put another piece in his hands that had the same symbols as the one he had found, he felt his willpower start to weaken. The parts fit together. By themselves, they were warnings. They were a prophecy when they were together. The cultists said that an alignment was coming that would be longer and deeper than any that had ever been seen before. They thought it would happen while he was still alive. Some looked forward to it with respect, while others were afraid. But everyone agreed that the world above and below would be changed. Elian felt a cold run through him as he listened. If the council realized how near the prophecy was to coming true, they would smash this movement. But it seemed like being quiet was more risky than talking. For the first time, he thought that his job as a historian could not just be to research the past, but also to get ready for the future. In that cave, with firelight and the cult's intense gaze all around him, Alien understood that he no longer had to decide whether to believe. He had to decide whether to act. Alien roamed the streets of Lumeris like he had never seen them before in the days following he met the cult. The underground city had always looked unbreakable to him, like a fortress against the suns, with its towers and gardens prospering, in spite of the world above. It felt like every glowstone lantern, every water channel, and every mechanical heartbeat of the enormous engines was weak and temporary, as if they were only waiting for the eternal shadow to come and take it all away. He couldn't shake the feeling that Kaylin's words were heavy on his mind, but life in the city went on with its own rhythms. Marketplaces were busy with commerce, kids chased each other under crystal lamps, and workers went down into tunnels to gather minerals and mushrooms. The Council of Light offered people the false sense of security they wanted, but Lumeris's solidity was never as strong as stone. The council kept things in order by carefully rationing food and water and keeping people calm with delicate hands. People heard rumors of uprisings in the poorer districts and families who were cut off from food for daring to question the rules. Soldiers with shiny armor patrolled the main streets. Their mirrored visors reflected the light of crystals, which were symbols of power that reminded people who had the keys to survival. But fear was stirring underneath the shiny sheen of control. The solar dominion, which was far away in Asia's caverns, had become brave. Merchants talked about spies moving throughout Lumeris, and travelers from faraway caves brought news of armies training in the dark. War, which used to seem impossible underground, suddenly seemed like it had to happen. The council called Alien. In this setting, he wasn't surprised. Archivists often reported to the ruling body, and his work had gotten attention before. But when he walked inside the big room, a cathedral made of stone with mirrors on the walls that reflected the light from fake suns, he felt a tension in the air that wasn't normal. The counselors sat in a half-circle of thrones, their white robes adorned with silver threads, and their features were serious. High Counselor Marin leaned forward in the middle, his eyes like chunks of icy glass. "We hear whispers," Marin added. "Whispers of pieces found, of works that weren't allowed to be studied. Elian, you are a historian. You know how dangerous it is to tell lies without thinking. Please tell us what you found." The words hit him harder than he thought they would. The council already knew. Maybe they always have. He thought about Kalen's scarred face, the peace that was given to him, and the cultists who were watching him with burning faith. To tell the truth now would be to betray them, and maybe even the future itself. But lying to the council was dangerous. He chose to be careful. "I study what is left," he answered carefully. "Most fragments are fractured and not whole. They talk about cycles, alignments, and shadows. All I do is interpret. People need stories. It makes them feel better." Marin looked at him for a long time, as if he were weighing his soul. Then the High Counselor grinned, a thin, pointed smile. "Comfort is helpful," he remarked. "Fear is not. This is something you should remember, historian. The suns will always blaze. The people need to have faith in their light. If you say something else, you are asking for things to fall apart." Elian bowed and went, but the meeting made him feel uneasy. The council was not stupid. They knew about the documents, maybe even more than the cult did. But instead of getting ready for the potential of change, they buried it under ideology. They had authority because they were sure of themselves. To say that the suns might fail was to say that life itself was fragile, and the illusion of control would break. When he got back to his room that night, he saw a mark on his door, a circle with 2 lines through it, the sign of the shadow cult. It wasn't a threat, it was a call. They were letting him know that the council had observed that he had been quiet. He stood there in the pale light of crystal, his heart racing as he fought between 2 forces that could not be brought together. On one side are the council, who keep order but are also slaves to denial. On the other hand, the cult, who hold the truth yet are full of zeal. Elian felt the walls of Lumeris closing in on him as they fought. He had planned to study the history, but now it was right in front of him, making him make decisions that could change the future. The eternal shadow was no longer just a part of history. It was a storm on the way, and he was right in the way. Whispers were often the first signs of trouble. People in the lowest areas of Lumeris, where the air was wet and the crystal's shine was weak, whispered of water shortages, rations being slashed without explanation, and families being turned away from the reservoirs. Whispers turned into chants. Chants became into groups, and soon the narrow alleyways were full of people clamoring for change. The council sent out patrols, with troops marching in ranks and their mirrored visors blank and uncompromising. The order was restored, but the silence that came after was fragile, like glass about to break. In the middle of all this stress, the cult of the shadow got brave. They moved through the city like smoke, unseen but always there. People started drawing symbols of eclipsed suns on walls with charcoal and ash. After curfew, old songs that were part prayer and half prophecy might be heard in the alleys. The cult didn't just talk in dark caves anymore. They talked in markets, workshops, and even in the middle of Lumeris. Some people were interested, while others were scared, but everyone listened. The theory of the eternal shadow, which was once thought to be heretical, now had the weight of possibility. Elian sensed the change more than other people did. He walked through the archives with the peace on his mind, knowing it was more than just a belief. It was proof. He saw the faces of the cultists in the masses, their eyes flaming with certainty, and he wondered whether they already knew how close they were to the truth. Every day he reminded himself to stay quiet and just watch, but silence had become a choice. Kalen discovered him again one night. She walked through the empty halls of the archive, her scarred face lighted by the chilly light of mushrooms. She said, "The council will not get ready. They will hold on to their light until it blinds them. But we know the truth. And you do too." She gave him a sealed scroll that was older than any record he had ever seen. The script was the same as the fragment, with lines flowing with the same accuracy. It told stories of oceans that came back when the suns lined up, of cities that sank, and of survivors who forged new lives in the dark. The cycle had happened before. It would happen again. Elian's heart raced as he read. It wasn't a prophecy. It was in the past. The council disputed that patterns had caused the rise and fall of whole civilizations. But if he told anyone about it, there would be havoc everywhere. The cult would say they won. The council would get angry, and Lumeris would fall apart before the shadow even got there. The city shook outside. In the poorer districts there were fights, with stones hurled at soldiers and soldiers hitting back with steel. Smoke climbed to the tops of the caves, making the crystals look dull. Whispers became cries, and cries turned into riots. And in the middle of all the tumult, Alien realized the reality he could no longer ignore. The eternal shadow was coming, but the city might kill itself long before the suns ever came together. There was little fanfare for the day of the alignment. There were no trumpets in the council halls or preaching on the streets of Lumeris, but everyone felt it. A shaking in the air and a peculiar silence in the light of the fake lamps. The two suns began to slowly move toward one another, their orbits coming together in a pattern that has been engraved into the bones of history. This happened far above the cave ceilings, across miles of rock and desert. Millions of people came to the grand cavern in the middle of Lumeris. It was a huge space dug out for festivals of stillness. The council ordered that all artificial lights be turned off. Crystals darkened, gardens of fungi slid into darkness, and towers appeared as shadows. The only light came from holes carved in the stone that let in the tiniest glimmer of the sky above. People stood quietly in wonder, waiting for one sun to cover the other. Elian stood beside them, hiding the scroll Kaelin had given him under his robe. He could sense that the city was holding its breath. Kaelin herself stood next to him, her scarred face turned up to the ceiling as if she could see the skies through the rock. Soldiers stood on the fringes of the crowd, but their mirrored visors didn't help in the dark. The council sat on their thrones and tried to look calm, but their eyes showed fear. They also know the old records. Then it took place. The bigger sun moved over the smaller one, and for the first time in 100 years, it got dark. Not the dull twilight of fake lights, but real darkness. The complete lack of light. Stars shone through the shafts above, cold and bright, reminding me of the rest of the universe. People gasped as they looked up, crying at the sight of stars they had never seen before. Generations reborn in awe. But the dark did not go away. Minutes turned into an hour. The air got cooler, and the gathering went quiet. There were whispers, then yells. Some people shouted praise, and cultists chanted that the eternal shadow had finally come. Some people were scared and asked the council to explain why the suns had not yet come back. The soldiers stood closer together, not sure whether to attack or pray. Elian's chest felt tight. He had known this moment was coming, but it was another to know it and live it. The prophecy came true. The cycle was back. Above the stone roof, the earth was already changing. Deserts were getting cooler, winds were changing, and maybe the waters were starting to slowly come back. But down here, in the metropolis founded on control and denial, mayhem broke out. The council endeavored to get things back to normal. High Counselor Marin's voice came out, saying that the darkness would not last and telling everyone to stay calm. But the public didn't listen anymore. "The shadow is truth," echoed around the cave, drowning away his voice. "The shadow is everything." There were fights. Fists hit, knives were brandished, and soldiers moved toward protesters. The Grand Cavern, which used to be a holy sanctuary, turned into a battlefield. In the middle of the turmoil, Kaelin grabbed Alien's arm. "Now you see. This is how the old world came to an end. But we can choose. Help us lead them. Otherwise the shadow will not save us. It will eat us." Alien was unsure. He had been a historian his whole life, keeping the past alive. But the past had flowed into the present, and now he was at the verge of the future. He could agree with the council and hold on to order based on denial. He may join the cult and give up the truth for zeal, or he could do something else, something risky and unknown, but his own. Alien climbed onto a broken dais and held the scroll high. His voice echoed across the cave, louder than soldiers and chanting. He interpreted the old passages not as prophecy, but as history. He told them of civilizations that had survived the shadow not by worship or denial, but by coming together. He talked about oceans coming back to life, places healing, and people changing again. He yelled, "The suns will come back, but when they do, things will be different in the world. We shouldn't fight over the darkness. We need to get ready for the dawn that will come after it." For a moment, the cave was quiet. Thousands of people looked at him, torn between terror and hope. The council was angry, and the cult was happy, but the people listened. And maybe, in that quiet moment, a seed was planted. The eternal shadow went on and on above. No one knew how long it would endure. Days, months, and years went by, and the world changed. coming back to life without light. People, weak and divided, were about to face their worst challenge, and Alien, who had once been a plain historian, had become its voice. Welcome to Beyond the Fractals. Subscribe now and explore every reality.